That's the importance, I think, for practices to convert over to electronic records, because as long as you've got a backup system and a redundant backup system in case one fails, and they do, then you never lose your patient information. If I had $1 for every time I heard that from some of our senior dentists, oh, no, it's not a business. Yeah, it is. And along with running a business, there is a certain amount of documentation that needs to be done. So it just, well-run practices have good administrative protocols, and this has to be one of them. Every practice needs to have a policy that employees sign off on that says, I will not do this. They can check their personal email on their cell phone or their tablet device. They can do it on their own time. No one needs to check their personal Facebook page all day when they're at work. They're not being paid to do that.
Get ready for your unofficial dental hygiene podcast. These are the tales of two hygienists, one East Coast RDH and one West Coast hygienist. Listen as they tackle the profession of dental hygiene with humor and enthusiasm. Now, please join Michelle Strange and Andrew Johnston as they tell you a tale of two hygienists.
All right. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of A Tale of Two Hygienists, episode number 244. My name is Andrew.
And this is Michelle. An unsunburned Michelle. Andrew, I'm disgusted by you right now.
Unsunburned Andrew.
Oh my gosh. I'm so annoyed by you.
We're the same.
Listen. I know that you spent all this time in the Philippines and you love the culture, but I'm going to tell you, you don't have the same kind of melanin. So you can't be going out there like without sunscreen and protecting yourself. I'm sorry. You just can't do it.
No. Right. So, okay. I think we announced already. Maybe we didn't. I took a position with a company called Coast Dental. I'm the director of hygiene now for them. And we're in Florida. The thing is, of course, the kids want to be at the beach all the time, which I support. It's one of the reasons why we moved down here. And I put sunscreen on them. I just may have forgot to put it on myself, but the sunscreen was there. I just forgot.
Well, I'm just going to say, I am going to have to dissolve this podcast. If you come up with like skin cancer, I can't be there for that. Like you can't take responsibility for your own health.
I know. And every right to do that. So, and Allison's been on my case a little bit about it as well.
Good.
This is something that I'm aware of. It is a problem I'm trying to get over, just like my addiction to rock stars, which I'm actually calling it an addiction now.
Baby steps.
Yeah. Like, look, we're going to get there. So
but how is
let me just be burned.
How is this like the same? Like you not putting on sunscreen versus being addicted to rock stars? Are you just not doing it on purpose?
I don't like the feel of that on my skin. I really, really despise it. Like it makes me feel disgusting having a coating of anything on my skin.
But here you are putting Germ-X on your face.
Not Germ-X. It's hand sanitizer with emollients.
Still.
Not Germ-X, because Germ-X is disgusting. And I wouldn't do Germ-X because it's too gel based. I have to have the Misters one. And anyways, it's a whole thing. I just can't do it. I don't like it at all, but I will get better. I need to research. Now that I have a reason to be doing it regularly, I'm going to go through the efforts of researching the kinds that I will use.
Okay. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to dermstore.com right now. After we're done with the podcast, I'm going to send you my favorite, which is Elta MD. I put it on my face every single day. And granted, I know I got a pretty insane skincare routine, but I put sunscreen on every single day, even if I'm staying inside.
Okay. Well, I'm probably not going to do that.
Yeah.
But I will.
I'm going to send it to you because it's super light, but it has zinc in it. And so it's almost like a physical barrier, but you can't really feel it. It's very silky. So I'm going to do that.
That's
because
fair. That's fair.
You're my friend and I can't see your stupid face be that lobster red.
Right. Because you love me and you care for me.
And I care about skin.
All right. Well, for everyone tuning in, this is actually a dental podcast, and we're going to get off of the whole skincare thing here in a minute after she's done shaming me. I'm hoping.
We'll see. I might circle back. I don't know. But yes, welcome to this podcast. If you're new, this is me and Andrew. We've been buddies for 5 years now. I mean, this is crazy to me. So now we're just pretty much brother and sister. And if I can't give him a hard time, then like, what's the purpose?
Yeah, I know. It's not nearly as fun.
But I think we need to circle back to the fact that you did take a new position. You are in Tampa now, and that's amazing because we teased that all last month, and we were telling everybody. And if you follow us on social media, I hope that you do, Instagram and Facebook. We were kind of taking you along your journey from Washington State, so far across the United States to Florida to Tampa.
Yeah. I mean, it was a whirlwind of an experience, and I'd be lying if I said that this was my game plan all along to climb up a corporate ladder and be in a position where I'm the director of hygiene. Now, have I thought about it? Sure. It's been something that I think that I could have done, but I just love hygienists. I love teaching, helping, educating, being that resource, the support person, the cheerleader if I have to be the cheerleader. And when this opportunity came along, dang, like it happened all so fast. And I'm just so very, very happy. And I should also thank you guys, the listeners, for helping our podcast be successful, because I think that actually was one of the major things that they were looking at is my longevity, my stick to it,
to-itedness.
that whatever that is. And I've been at my last DSO for 8+ years, almost 9 years. And so I think that there was a lot of kind of factors in there that were kind of helped me get the job. So thank you everyone for your support.
You're going to be, I mean, you love this side of it. So it's just great. I think you're going to miss seeing patients, but ultimately.
I think so too. But gosh, you know what though? I sat in day one. It was like an executive meeting, and they said, all right, everyone, we're going to change the face of the company. We're hygiene focused. I mean, there's obviously going to be, dentistry focused, but there's never been this emphasis on hygiene like there is going to be now. And they're giving them all the tools, all the resources to be successful in the job. And it's a perio focused. We're down in Florida, right? The population's going to kind of dictate what we need to do, but it is exciting to be here. So yeah, I'll miss patients. I will for sure miss seeing patients, but I think we have an opportunity here to kind of make it
nice,
maybe a little more impactful for more people. So hopefully that'll give me the thing I need. So
that's great. I'm going to start temping, I think, at one particular office to help them catch up.
How do you feel about that?
I'm missing patients. Like, my clinic's been shut down since March. I've gone in and done some oh man, the suctions. Y'all stay tuned for part 2, part 3 of my test and trial of a lot of different suction. Man, I'm just enjoying so many options right now. But that's all I've really done. And I miss it, man. I'm not really super excited about hand scaling, but because, I was on that path of putting my scaler down, and it was like biofilm management all day, every day. And now I feel like I'm backtracking a little bit, but I have my PDT instruments, I love my PDT instruments. I take them on all my mission trips, and I hand scale on mission trips. So I just feel like I'm going to feel like I'm doing great for something somewhere like I do on my mission trips, and I'll just suck it up.
Yeah. Well, I mean, because it's better than no treatment at all, right? So
yeah,
a good, better, best is a thing that we focus on all the time. And this is still a really good service that we're doing for people. People are still going to get healthy because of your services. So yeah, I'm really excited about that for you.
Me too. So I'm
just being back in it, man. That's exciting.
Yeah, but I'm not a temp. I don't love it. I don't love temping. The only reason I'm doing it in this particular office is because I've worked there before as far as a temp. Somebody went on maternity leave, and I took a few of their days each week. It's been a little while, and then this will be a consistent. I shouldn't say I'll be temping. I guess I'm filling in to help get their patients under control since they're so far behind. And I think that's the only reason I would do it. I'm not that hygienist that can just roll up into another practice and just kind of jump into it. Gosh, it gives me so much anxiety.
It takes a special type of person.
It really does. I am so in awe of all the people who just kind of, they're like, okay, I'm here. I'll figure out your software. I'll figure out where, your instruments are. And my anxiety level is way too high for that.
I didn't mind doing that kind of work. I mean, because I've done similar type of work, but it's within a particular company. So I don't have the 8 different softwares to have to try and learn
Right.
and navigate, and then the different sensor systems, or maybe they're still using phosphor plates, or maybe they're still using, some offices are still doing just like the traditional films for x-rays. Like, I don't have to figure out all of those types of things. And even films, like you think about that too. It's like, well, you have your XCPs or your RINs or whatever you want to call them, the devices to help you kind of align things, or you have those paper tabs, or you have the little foam thing. Like, there's so many different things, and it does take a special person. So
it does. And I'm not there. Like, I need to know, like, are we having huddles in the morning? How can I talk to the doctor about treatment? How can I do that handoff? Like, it's never been for me just like show up and remove plaque, remove calculus, get them in, get them out, which not saying that temps are, all doing that and that's their main goal. But, it for me, I need a little bit more understanding of like, okay, well, where's this patient go after this? How, what's their past been like before? Are you going to be talking about crowns? Are we talking about perio treatment? Like, where are we at? And just, not all offices do that kind of thing. So I'm like, oh, anxiety.
you got it though. You're
yeah,
amazing.
it'll be fine. Well, thanks, friend. But I'm just happy to get back in there and start treating some patients. I don't know if I could get to a point in my career where I just don't see patients anymore.
You know what? Give me a year in this role
And see
I'll
what
see
it's
if that's
like.
something that, I think we'll have to come back to this conversation.
Yeah, because, I went a
I said that
year
too.
in corporate and I was like, there was something seriously missing from my happiness in that role. And once I started seeing patients again, I was like, oh, this is it. This is it.
See, and I'm wondering, like, in my mind, I'm thinking like, well, what is it about this is it that made it? So was it the actual helping someone get healthy? And is there a way to do that by proxy? Is there a way to, like when you're helping your students and they unlock that one little tiny thing and you're like, oh, that feels so good that they understood that. I'm hoping that there's going to be like some transitive property thing happening that like, I'm going to be able to help somebody else.
Right.
And like really get it. And we're going to be helping hundreds and thousands of patients because of it. Like that's my hope.
Yeah, for sure. I think that, well, I don't know. Yeah. So I get that with my students. Like when I was teaching, I haven't taught in like a little over a year because all my students were coming through my clinic. So I was kind of with them there. But I guess I got that like instant gratification. And maybe, I'm getting to a point where I'm like, I don't want to put scalar to tooth anymore. Like that's not like my ultimate goal. Like, even though I get that, heroin high of popping off calculus sometimes, it's still ultimately not like what I really want to do. I could just do home care instructions probably for a very, very long time and be totally fulfilled. But it's, I don't know. I think it is that one-on-one, like you help people understand something. So maybe I just wasn't getting that from the corporate side of it. And that's what I got from treating a patient, that one-on-one, like that aha moment, that light bulb, that making a difference.
Yeah.
But anyway, anywho, let's get into, so this month is Dental Infection Control Awareness Month. I feel like 2020 has kind of been Dental Infection Control Awareness Month year. But yeah, this month is definitely a big focus. And so last week I did a roundtable with Emily Bogey and Jessica Atkinson, and we were really, they're faculty members, and they were talking about, what's going on with students and changing up the clinics. And this week we're going to be talking to, I'm going to make sure I can say her name properly, Mary Govoni. I say it right in the podcast. I'm so sorry, Mary, if I'm butchering it right now. We all know how horrible I am with last names. It's bad. But we're kind of partnering or at least going in tandem with OSAP, who is putting on Dental Infection Control Awareness Month. So definitely go check out OSAP. And they have PDFs and handouts and a script for that patient professional interaction. So go check that out, definitely. And then also, I took a few of Mary's courses. They're out there in the digital space. If you just Google her name, I highly encourage you to do that. But today we're like focusing on HIPAA. And that's, we've had people on before talking about HIPAA. It's something I think we all need to hear a few times in a year just to remind ourselves, like, you can't be putting that on social media and you can't be having your cell phone in certain areas. Like, I think we've gotten very lax, but she did a great job at reviewing and going through some major tips for us. So I'm sure you're going to learn a lot, but please share this episode because we really need to make sure that we're all on the same page when it comes to HIPAA. So enjoy this episode with Mary.
Hey, Michelle.
Yeah.
It's time for the interview.
Oh, but I had something else to say.
We need to let the experts talk now.
Fine.
Listeners, I am super excited for this entire month. I think OSHA and HIPAA and infection control and just the culture of safety in dentistry is incredibly important. And I'm really, really excited to have our guest on today. I've actually taken multiple of her webinars in the last few months, and I have tons of notes and stuff, but I have Mary Govoni. Did I say that correctly?
Yes, you did. Thank you.
Yay. I have Mary on to talk with us a little bit about HIPAA, and because that is not where I am strong and I am ready to learn. So welcome to the podcast, Mary.
Thank you very much.
So tell us a little bit about who you are, what you've been doing, what you do in dentistry.
Okay. Well, this year is my 49th year working in dentistry, which is a little scary, probably longer than some of the listeners have been alive. And I started out as a chairside assistant, and then I became a hygienist, and I taught in a dental hygiene community college program. And where I really got interested in the regulatory side of dentistry was when I owned a staffing service, a temporary staffing service. That was when the OSHA rules started coming into existence that affected dentistry. And I had lots of clients that I worked with that were concerned that because I had provided all the training for my temporary employees that went in, that they sort of knew more than the employees in the dental offices. So my doctors started asking me to come and do the training and help them to be in compliance. And I got so busy doing that I sold my interest in the staffing service. And so I've been doing this now for almost 30 years. That is another scary number. So, and it was so interesting because when the HIPAA rules came out in 2003, I mean, I paid attention to it. I knew it was going to affect us in dentistry, but I really didn't have an idea that was where my business was also going to go. But what I found was that my clients all just assumed that because I knew OSHA compliance and I knew infection control, that I could help them with HIPAA. So, kind of back to school again and learn all about this. And so it's been interesting. And we've come a long way, I think, in terms of compliance, but we're not quite there yet, in my opinion. There's always room for improvement. But at first, there was a lot of pushback and denial, just like with OSHA regulations. Please don't tell me what to do. It's going to cost me more money to do this. But now it's something that patients expect. And we understand that there's consequences from violating the rules, anywhere from, losing all your data to being fined by OSHA. And so it's getting better. But it's kind of taken a back seat to COVID-19. So I think what I would like to do is really just do a quick update on which rules we have to deal with, and then go through what I would call sort of the top 10 common violations that I see in dentistry.
Okay.
All right. So first and foremost, if you want to know if you are compliant, you have to know what your rules you're supposed to be following. Step one. So we have 4. First of all, the privacy rule, which was the first one that came out in 2003, then the security rules in 2005, and then in 2013, the privacy and security rules were combined into what is referred to as the omnibus rule. And then in between that time, we had the high tech rule, which talks about all the computer security and other types of safeguards that we need to take for our patients' protected health information. And then the breach notification rule, which I think most people are sort of familiar with, but we'll talk about that when we talk about some of the security protocols. Again, just a quick overview. The crux of everything we do with HIPAA is really about protected health information, protecting all the information that we have in our practices, in our facilities about our patients, whether it's electronic and it's stored on the server, or whether it's paper, because there still are practices that have paper records. And there's not a direct mandate in dentistry for electronic records. However, there is a mandate from the HIPAA rules that says our data has to be available and accessible at all times. So with paper records, an entirely paper record keeping system on our patients, there's no way to back all that information up. So disaster strikes, there's a fire, there's a tornado, there's a flood, all the patient records are gone. So that's the importance, I think, for practices to convert over to electronic records, because as long as you've got a backup system and a redundant backup system in case one fails, and they do, then you never lose your patient information. So that's a really critical thing to know. So I get a lot of questions about, well, what does it mean? The PHI, the protected health information, what is it? And literally it's everything. It's their personal information. It's their medical and dental information. It's treatment records. It's financial information. It's everything that you have about your patient, whether you have it in your practice management software or whether you have it on ledger cards. I was in a practice just before COVID that was still using ledger cards in a pegboard system, which was, and one of their questions was, how do we age our accounts receivable? I'm like, not easily. I know. It's crazy. But, there are some people who don't trust the technology. And I understand there's threats to the technology, but oh my goodness, it's just so time consuming and not secure to do those kinds of things. Then in terms of protecting the protected health information, we have to look at, who do we disclose it to or not disclose it to? Do we have permission to talk to family members, for example, or not? And there are situations where even with a husband and wife, the spouses don't want the other spouse to know what's going on with them, which is probably more of a statement about the relationship than it is about, their concerns. But it happens. It happens. And we have to be very careful about how we transmit that data if we're sending information electronically, and how we store, for example, the paper records. The trend in office design for a number of years using paper charts was just to have open shelving rather than file cabinets, because file cabinets, especially locking filing systems, are expensive. So you could save money and just have these open shelves. Well, then anybody can come in. If I'm the cleaning person, I can come in at night and I can go through all of those records and maybe get some credit card information, maybe get some social security numbers, and those kind of breaches have happened. And then how do we store it on our server if we have all electronic information? Is the server in a secure place? Now, you can't completely prevent it from being stolen, and that has happened. There have been break-ins in dental practices and medical facilities where they do what's called a smash and grab. They break in, they grab the server and go, or it could be hacked and crashed by malware and viruses and so forth. So there's lots of little intricacies involved in how we protect that information. So what I'd like to do now is just go on this sort of journey about what I see are the top violations. Part of the issue, and you probably see this too, Michelle, with OSHA and infection control compliance. We get so caught up in the busyness of treating patients, we don't take the time to do the things that we need to do. And in dentistry, we don't have necessarily a designated HR person or a designated, manager that can do all these things. If there is a practice administrator, they're doing so many more things that you tell them, you need to manage all the HIPAA documentation, and like, yeah, get real. I don't have time for that. So because we know that the Department of Health and Human Services does a number of random audits every year of healthcare facilities, we could be in dentistry subject to a random audit, and you would get a notification through certified mail that says you've been selected. And one of the first things they ask for is documentation. So you need to have documentation of security policies, privacy policies, training records, all the things you do to safeguard the PHI for your patients. And many people will purchase a manual, for example, from the American Dental Association, and they've got a great HIPAA compliance manual. However, the misconception, I think, on the part of people that purchase it is that is their compliance system, and they don't take the time. Right. They think they're done. They don't take the time to customize it, to make it their own. And so whatever it says in a policy in that manual is what you would be held to. And if it wasn't indicative of what was happening in a practice, then there could be some issues. So it's a little scary sometimes for people not knowing how to start, where to begin. And some of this information is overwhelming. And I think that the practices, at least initially, can benefit from working with a consultant or a facilitator to help them get a system established, even using something they've already purchased, but helping to customize it and get it ready for them to be able to maintain it going forward, and designating someone to be the HIPAA officer or the HIPAA manager in the practice.
And given the time to do it.
And exactly, given the time to do it. So whether it's release time from maybe chairside functions or administrative functions, whatever it is, initially it's maybe several hours or more of getting everything organized and put together. But once the system's organized, and especially if you do it electronically, where you have policies and so forth that are in electronic documents, then you can easily edit and maintain them. And it doesn't take that much. The good news about the HIPAA rules is they don't change, like all of our infection control guidance that's coming at us like every other month, or every month we get an update. So once you get this established, there's not a lot that you have to update. You just have to make sure that you do training regularly. And that's another thing that I see that happens or doesn't happen in practices. That first and foremost, HIPAA says that new employees must receive training. And maybe an employee comes from another practice and they say, oh, sure, I did HIPAA training there, but it needs to be specific to that practice. What are the forms that practices uses for patient acknowledgement? What are their policies on having discussions with patients and about treatment and so forth? So it really needs to be not a lengthy training session, but part of an orientation. So part of onboarding a new employee should be some form of HIPAA training. Even though the information doesn't change regularly, it really, again, should be something that's customized to that practice.
So, Mary, just a quick question, because I know a lot of times this is the question I get when we look at OSHA and infection control and audits and the cost to train somebody and the time. Let's say the person who is going to be the HIPAA person in the office is, let's say, the dental assistant, and they are working 36 to 40 hours in a dental office. And now they're saying, I need extra time to gather all this information and make sure our training is on point and that we're doing all these things. And the dentist or the practice owner just says, the chance that we get audited is so minimal that I just don't see the benefit of giving you the time. I mean, is that something that you hear? Because I definitely hear it in the infection control space.
I hear it all the time. And I tell the doctors they need to look at the investment of the time and paying that employee as an insurance policy. That the cost of having a violation or having fines from an audit is far and above what you may have paid in some perhaps even overtime hours to a team member to work with getting the documentation together and maintaining it and so forth. It's sort of been that, I think, the mindset of many employers that, well, you just do it within the confines of the time that you're here. I don't want to pay you overtime and I don't want to take away from productivity, but you can't have both. You either have that person on board with providing the best patient care, customer service to patients and focusing all their attention on that when the patients are there, and then having downtime for that person to do the other administrative things. And I think some of this comes from the old school view of dentistry, which is it's really not a business. It's a dental practice. If I had $1 for every time I heard that from some of our senior dentists, oh, no, it's not a business. Yeah, it is. And along with running a business, there is a certain amount of documentation that needs to be done. So it just well-run practices have good administrative protocols, and this has to be one of them.
Thank you. That was a perfect answer.
It's a challenge. It's a huge challenge. And it stresses out the team members if they're told they have to do it and try to fit it in, in between patients, or, well, do it on your lunch hour. No, you can't do it and do it justice. You just really have to have dedicated time to do it. And as I said earlier, it's an initial investment in time and some compensation to an employee to get a system set up. After that, there's not a lot that needs to be maintained other than making sure there is training for new employees and that employees get trained at least annually, or perhaps even in a team meeting that we have an update of, perhaps there's some new development or there's been a security issue in the practice. And so we talk about that. And that can be documented as part of ongoing training. So I think that maybe would help.
That's perfect.
Yeah. Then one of the other things I see, and this again goes down to, administrative costs and so forth. Lots of practices use what the technology experts call an open email infrastructure for sending messages from the practice. The practice uses Gmail or Yahoo, and they're communicating with patients or they're communicating with other healthcare professionals. And even though those emails don't necessarily contain patient information, an open email infrastructure is so fraught with security risks because it's open to hacking. It's open to following your email address back to your server. It's monitored. If you ever wonder why, when you've gone searching on the internet or you sent an email to someone, that all of a sudden you start getting emails from companies that want to sell you something or promote something, or perhaps it's a phishing attempt or it's malware. It's because those emails are being monitored and intercepted, and your email addresses are being sold to brokers. So using a secure email, perhaps through their website, their web host, if it's through one of the companies that work specifically in dentistry, or you have a web site that's hosted through, for example, GoDaddy, they have secure email that is not completely hack proof, but it's at a whole level of security above what just using Gmail is. And the beauty of using an email infrastructure that goes through your website, it uses your practice domain name. So if it's Dr. Mary Govoni at drmarygovoni.com, then that's my brand that's going out there, rather than Dr. Mary Govoni at gmail.com. See the difference? Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. And it's not an expensive proposition. It comes with your website hosting. So hopefully whoever hosts a practice's website gives them that option and sets up the email addresses using the domain, which is much, much more secure than using other types. I wouldn't go near Yahoo for any amount of money. It's very, very not secure. They don't really want to say insecure, but because that implies something totally different. And then, of course, following on top of that is then sending patient information unencrypted. So if it's a radiograph, it's a report, it's any kind of information that pertains to the patient, remember that especially radiographs or images are stored on your server. And if you don't encrypt them, meaning it's copied and then separated from storage on your server, sending out a radiograph through Gmail, for example, unencrypted, then leads that or a hacker all the way back again to your server. They can just follow that electronic pathway. So anything that has patient information does need to be encrypted. Now, we had lots of resistance to this in the beginning. Oh my gosh, it takes so much more time. And somebody has to log in and use a password and get the information. You know what? It's what you have to do. And it really doesn't take that much more time. I've actually, when I've gone in to do training in offices and they, whine and moan about, it takes so much longer, I take a stopwatch with me, or I'll set my phone, do the timer on my phone and say, okay, show me how long it takes. Well, it might be 5 seconds or 10 seconds. And then they start to see that, okay. The biggest barrier then is we're asking them to make a change. And yes, it may take a little bit longer, but there's so many good encryption services out there. They're not expensive. It's usually less than $20 a month to subscribe. Some of them are even included in some web hosting. It just depends on what infrastructure that the practice has. Plus, most of them now will integrate right into the practice management software. So you get an icon on the taskbar for your encryption service. So you don't even have to close out of EagleSoft or Dentrix or Open Dental or whatever. You just go right to this encryption icon and it asks you what you want to encrypt and attach, and it's done. So that and that's a huge risk. Yeah, it is nice. We've come pretty far from the early days. I've also seen some specialty practices actually create a portal on their website. So if a general practice wants to send radiographs to the oral surgeon, for example, they can go onto the oral surgeon's website and log in and upload whatever images or information they need, and then it's securely saved in that practice. And the same thing going back. If there's a report from the surgeon, from the endodontist, whatever, they can notify their patient or their referring doctors, say, log in and you can download the report on your patient. So it works really well. We have lots and lots and lots of options now. That's way better than it used to be.
I do have a quick question about the email, because we did have a dentist on that implied one time that if the patient gives you permission to send through Gmail, if something happens, you won't be in trouble. Because if you say, no, this isn't a safe way to reply back to you with your documents, your email, and they reply back, no, it's fine, I prefer it this way, you have the right to go ahead and send it to them without being or getting in trouble if something were to happen?
Well, it all depends on if something happens. So, and I've heard that argument before. And my analogy that I use is the patients who don't want radiographs. So we can have them sign a statement saying we've recommended, they refuse, blah, 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 sign my name, date it, but it doesn't relieve the dentist of the responsibility to make a full and accurate diagnosis. So it doesn't really hold up in court. And I've seen these kinds of issues not hold up in an audit. So you can try it. I think it's a false sense of security. Patients can't sign away their rights. Yeah, patients can't sign away their rights, and they can't sign away their right to privacy. Now, and it all goes back to, and you know this, Michelle, we will bend over backwards. We will do whatever we need to do to make our patients love us.
Right.
And the minute they give pushback, we say, oh, okay, it'll be all right. And we have to really gently but firmly tell them that is not acceptable. We use the highest level of security that we can to protect your information. So here's what you have to do. You're going to have to log in. And I think what patients are now seeing in the medical arena is the greater use of portals, so that their medical practice has a portal for all of their information, and they get a secure login, and they go in and they look at messages, they can check their records and all of that. And I wish that would come for dentistry at some point, because the great part about it is you can register your patients that way. And that some of that's already available for us in dentistry, but it's even at a higher level that they could view their x-rays, they could view like their perio charts and things that we allow them to see in their records. But yeah, I wouldn't use that as an excuse not to send that patient information.
No, I think the analogy of what if our patients, which some people still are though, like, oh, they didn't want it, they signed it. And I'm like, okay, well,
absolutely.
It doesn't relieve you of anything, but okay.
Yeah, it doesn't. That's just considered to be supervised neglect. And that's a tough one. And it again, it goes back to, wanting our patients to like us and allowing patients to dictate how we treat. I worked with a doctor a number of years ago who had a blindfold that he would keep in his lab coat pocket. And if a patient was refusing x-rays, he'd put the blindfold on and he would say, this is how you want me to make a diagnosis. I really can't see. And it was very effective, and patients got it. And so you wouldn't necessarily have to put the blindfold on, but you could say, you're asking me to make a blind diagnosis here without that. So anyway.
No, perfect. Sorry, I didn't mean to derail you, but this is all great.
No, and I love the question. So no, that's perfect. On that note of talking about the email and the encryption and so forth, one of the things that many practices don't like to do because it's costly is have a contract for technology support, ongoing technology support, but they need to. We are so complex now with all of our equipment, imaging devices and milling devices and all those kinds of things that you need to make sure that somebody has really done an excellent job of setting up your network so that your network doesn't crash. And it's beyond just your support from your practice management software. It should be someone who can come on site. So a local company, although we have some national groups that work within dentistry, but they have local offices, local support, someone that can do a regular audit of your network to make sure that there's no security glitches, that they're monitoring operating system updates, Windows updates, and antivirus software and all those things. And ideally, the security that you have from your technology support should actually be monitoring your system all time, real time, and they should know before you even would if there's been some kind of a hacking attempt. And, it's not inexpensive. It's typically upwards of about $200 a month. But again, it's an insurance policy so that you don't end up having a breach. And, we'll talk about the breach notification here because I don't know that I actually included it in one of my top 10. If a practice has a security breach, someone's hacked into the server and they were able to get or encrypt, lock up patient information, and they may have had access to it, then a practice needs to notify all of those people that were affected. And they have to be, according to HIPAA, those people have to be notified in writing. So if you have a practice that has maybe 2,500 active patients, whose information was stored on that server, that's a lot of letters to send out. I mean, just the postage alone is going to be a pretty big number. Any breach of patient information where there was actually access to patient information that was gained from a hacking incident has to be reported within 60 days to the Department of Health and Human Services. Then if there's more than 500 people, you have to notify local media. So that's kind of not the marketing that you want out there in the local TV stations or the local newspaper. And then the other part of that is if you have an incident that's reported to the Department of Health and Human Services, it stays in their breach portal. And so if someone is searching the name of a particular dentist or practice online, that can come up as one of the search reports. So, it might bring up their website and some other information. And it could be, oh, guess what? This person's on this HIPAA breach portal. But then the biggest expense of this is that for all those patients whose information may have been breached, you have to provide access for credit report monitoring in all 3 credit reporting organizations. So Equifax, TransUnion, and I don't remember the name of the other one off the top of my head, but that's about $50 per site per patient.
Yikes.
Yeah, it's crazy. Now, you can buy cybersecurity insurance. Many state dental associations have it. You can buy it through your local business insurance agent that you work with. However, in order for that policy to pay out if you do have a breach, they're going to look and see that you had everything in place that you needed to have in place in order to prevent it. So it's not, you can have the insurance policy and then not have to worry about doing all the things that you need to do to try to secure it. So as I said, there's lots of little intricacies. So yeah, technology support. And, I used to, from the time I started my business, I was my own tech support, but I know now that everything is way too complex that I have to work with someone too. Do I love paying that support payment every month when maybe I haven't even used them from one month to another? No, I don't love it, but I know that it's there. And I know that if I have an issue, then they will help me and fix things for me very quickly. So gotta do it. Along with that support is making sure, as I kind of talked about before, making sure that you have appropriate firewalls set up. And the firewalls usually are included or built into the routers that we use for the network. But it can't be just something that you go to Best Buy and put in your office that you would use at home. It has to be much more robust to protect the information in a dental practice. And antivirus software, anti-malware software, and then the real big issue that I see in terms of security and practices is with passwords. I still see practices that do not have unique passwords for each member of the team into their practice management software. Everybody all logs in under the same password, and that is not allowed by HIPAA. You have to be able to track everyone's log in and log out and access to the patient's information. And if practices do have unique passwords, they've probably been the same passwords that they've used for years without changing them. And HIPAA recommends using what is called the industry standard of changing a password every 90 days, which everybody hates because now we have to remember something new. But finally, the practice management software companies, the vendors have made this now a built-in default into the software. So if you've got a current version of your software, then it will automatically start to remind you that your password's going to expire and you're going to be locked out of the system. And that's important. And passwords need to be secure, not just, it used to be that the most common password that was used was 123456 or the word password. Yeah. Which has no security whatsoever. Keep in mind that hackers spend their life, this is their job, to break passwords. And so passwords need to be long, and they need to have a mix of characters and alphanumeric and special characters and all those types of things. Most of the security experts say use the longest password that your software will allow. And that could be up to 20 characters, which, people are like, oh my God, I don't want to do that. I hate it too. And I hate when I have to update my own passwords, but it's for your own good to make sure that your data is secure. And so if someone was audited and they saw that there either weren't unique passwords for everyone or they had never been changed, then that would probably be a pretty substantial fine because it's a critical part of security.
That makes sense, because if Microsoft Teams tells me every 90 days I got to change it and I got to make it unique and all this stuff, and the practice software isn't, seems a little crazy.
Well, it is. And, I think in the beginning, when the HIPAA security rule came out, we weren't so advanced, if you will, in terms of using technology in our treatment rooms and so forth. There still were a lot of practices that didn't even have practice management software in their offices back in the early 2000s. Kind of hard to believe, but there were. And many people had the view that HIPAA security was for big business. It didn't apply to small businesses, but it does. It applies to every business, every healthcare provider. And dentistry, because it's kind of known out there in that underworld of hackers, hasn't been as robust in its security. That we're the low-hanging fruit. We're the folks that they go after the most because there isn't a lot of security. The firewalls aren't that good. There aren't secure passwords, so it's easy to access. Now, what a lot of hackers, though, is want to go into larger facilities where they can get more patient information in one fell swoop rather than in a smaller dental practice. But still, we're vulnerable, and it's well known in that industry, if you will, that we're vulnerable. The average cost of a breach by the Department of Health and Human Services estimation for a small business like a dental practice is about $150,000. So that's a pretty scary number. So we have to take this seriously. And I tell people you need to take this seriously on your home computers as well. And then if practices take devices out of the office, like a backup drive that they take home with them at night, those need to be encrypted, so that if they lost it, if it got stolen out of their vehicle or stolen from their home, heaven forbid, that it would be much harder for somebody to actually get at the information that's stored in there. It's a scary world out there.
Yes, it is.
Yes. And the last couple of items I want to talk about are the ones that the team members hate and the patients hate. Number one is allowing patients to use their electronics in the treatment room. And the issue with this is that a tablet or a cell phone, a smartphone can record both video and audio. And that video or audio could possibly have images or recordings of other patients and violate their privacy. It also could be an issue when information is being discussed that could be recorded and used in some way that could, again, violate privacy for other patients. So it's not fun to be the cell phone police. It is not fun to tell these patients that they can't use their devices because a lot of them want to listen to music while they're being treated. They can put it on airplane mode and still listen to their information if they want to. And you can make exceptions. It's the child's first visit. Yes, mom or dad or grandma can come and take pictures of the patient, but not the whole appointment. Take a few and then we're done. We put it away. Somebody who just gets their ortho appliances on or just has them removed, take a few photos and then be done with it. But I'll tell you, the bigger issue now is that those cell phones are very contaminated, probably the most contaminated things we have. And so we don't want them out in the treatment rooms. So you can't stop all of it. Patients will do it no matter what, but you at least need to have some kind of sign somewhere going from the reception area into the clinical area or somewhere in the clinical area that says no cell phones or tablets allowed in this area. Or I've seen some practices say, if you need to use your cell phone or your tablet, please ask us. And practices that have really pretty strictly enforced this have found out that they are a lot more efficient because and I know that patients will try to answer a call. They will try to text. They will not pay attention. If they're so absorbed in texting during treatment, are they really understanding what's being done? Are they really engaged in our treatment discussions that we're having with them? So that's not a fun one. And team members should not have their cell phones in treatment rooms either. You don't want theirs to be contaminated, and they shouldn't be. Although I see people texting at chairside, or they say, oh my goodness, I have, kids somewhere. I need to know. You can make other arrangements for those emergency calls to come in. They don't need to have their cell phones by their side at all times. I literally watched a dental assistant suctioning and texting at the same time.
It's all the time. It's all the time.
Yeah. And so the practice needs to have a policy. In the HIPAA rules, it says you have to make your best faith effort to control it. It doesn't say they are not allowed. So some people will say, well, they're not allowed it doesn't say they're not allowed in the treatment room, but it does say there have to be efforts made to prevent it. But doctors, employers can make rules as long as it's not something that would be illegal for a team member to do. They can say our policy is no cell phones in the treatment room. Leave them in your locker, leave them in your car. And you can do that.
And I'm sure with social media.
Oh,
now.
Yes.
I don't know if you're going to get to that in your top 10, but that is definitely an issue. And I'm guilty of it like years ago, but gosh.
Absolutely. So you don't want patient information ending up on social media. And what I see a lot are practices using social media very well to promote their practice, but then patients figure it's easier to either send a Facebook Messenger message, which is so not secure. Facebook Messenger gets hacked all the time. Or they'll type in a comment on oh, my crown came off, whatever. And then they engage in this discussion about treatment on Facebook or Instagram or whatever. That is inappropriate. If you want to post photos of patients, we want to welcome Michelle as one of our favorite new patients in our practice, but Michelle has had to sign a disclosure giving permission for the use of her image on that social media site. And that really totally leads into my next point, which is allowing what I refer to as non-business use of the computers that are on the office network. So in a dental office, there is what is called an intranet. It's actually an internet connection between the server and all of the workstations. And that is what has to be firewalled and secured. But there also has to be a policy in place that employees do not do shopping on Amazon. They don't go post to their personal Facebook page. You should not post to your practice Facebook page on that internet connection. You can set up a Wi-Fi connection, a Wi-Fi network that's completely separate from your office intranet, where you can do your ordering, where you can do your Facebook posting and so forth. But HIPAA is very specific about a business, especially in a healthcare setting, that system not being used to download files, which can be fraught with malware and viruses and all of that. So every practice needs to have a policy that employees sign off on that says, I will not do this. They can check their personal email on their cell phone or their tablet device. They can do it on their own time. No one needs to check their personal Facebook page all day when they're at work. They're not being paid to do that. And that's what I'm said before, that the employees don't like that. The team members don't like that. But it's like, I'm sorry, that's not what you're paid to do when you're here. And we don't download games. I see people playing, Candy Crush and Solitaire on their work computers. No, that's not what you're being paid to do. And downloading those kinds of programs can cause problems with disrupting your software. So we have to be extremely careful with those kinds of things. Did you have any other issues about Facebook or social media?
Well, the thing that I see often isn't so much I still see photos 100%. Like, this person's on their phone. You can see not their face, but a lot of details. And you're like, oh, gosh, y'all, can we stop? But also, I always see a patient gave me permission. I have a 39-year-old white female struggling with what looks like lichen planus or whatever it could be. And I'm like, I don't think that's how that works. You can't just say patient gave me permission.
Well, yeah, that's a very murky area. And I don't know that social media is the place to be discussing treatment. It's just not. And a lot of people say that, just a smile is not identifiable, but courts have decided otherwise. So if you want to do a before and after smile photo, you need that patient's specific permission to use it. And you have to tell them what they're going to use it for. And it's not just a simple photo release. People confuse the two. A photo release says that patient gives you permission to use the image and not pay them a royalty for using their image. It says nothing about, I give you permission to use it for this specific purpose. And you can combine the two together, but HIPAA is very specific about that. So if it's identifiable to a patient, if it's one tooth or a quadrant, probably not. But if it's a smile, it can be. And I've seen a couple of instances where practices had these befores and afters that they put on their website, and patients looked at the website and said, whoa, I know that person, or, oh, that's me. I didn't give you permission to do that. And they were fined by HIPAA for inappropriate disclosure. If the patient gives you the permission, that's fine, but you have to get the patient to give you permission. And they can even put a timeline on it. They can say, you can do it for the next year or 2 years. And they can also ask you to disclose where and how you've used those images. And they can go back 6 years on that. Now, many patients don't know that, and I don't know if they would do it, but you just never know. And we have enough challenges in dentistry right now, having, patients who maybe don't feel safe going into the practice because of COVID-19. And we don't want to create any other reasons for patients to be distrustful of us. We need to be so completely transparent about it. And a lot of people are pretty cavalier and pretty nonchalant sometimes about patient information. And we just need to protect it, because there are right now many people who are unemployed or underemployed. And we know that there are people out there that are looking to sue someone to get some money. And a dental practice could be a great target for someone if that practice wasn't following appropriate protocols. It's a scary world out there.
It is. Thank you for all that information.
Sure. Some of it is not always the type of thing that patients or that practices want to hear. But we all need to hear it.
100%.
Any other questions? Any other topics that you think we should discuss?
Did that sum up your 10?
That did.
Oh my gosh, it went by so fast that I didn't even realize. I was not counting. Look at me being a crazy interviewer. I think honestly what gets me and where people struggle is the social media side these days. I do know, I was taking notes while you're doing it or going through all your stuff. And I kept coming up with thoughts of when back at the very beginning, I was like, oh, we've definitely done this with spouses, giving information out because we'll see them back to back or something, or, even new kids that become legal adults. And I know we've all kind of gotten ourselves in trouble with that. So I think refreshers about that is super important. And is there something that they can do, like a sign that like it says, yes, you can disclose it with my husband or my wife, or, the child that's now become 18 can say, yes, you can talk to my mom about this?
Right. I incorporate that right into the HIPAA acknowledgement form when I do a compliance manual for a client. So there's a space right on the form that says, you may talk to these people about my treatment. And then I always tell the teams to insert that into their practice management software, where it's either an alert or EagleSoft has a HIPAA screen, so you can put it in there so you can quickly look and see who you have permission to talk to. And then you need to flag patients that when they turn 18 and they become a legal adult, then they must complete their own HIPAA acknowledgement form. And they, again, need to give the practice permission to talk to the parents. And this creates an ugly situation sometimes because they, especially now, many of them are still on their patients or their parents' insurance, and they may be not employed or they may be in college. And so the parents are financially responsible for them, and the parents feel entitled to that information because they're paying the bill or providing the benefit. But we have to explain to them, again, gently but firmly, that because they're an adult, they need to give us permission to talk to you. And if that 18 to 26-year-old doesn't want to give permission to talk to their parents, even though the parents are financially responsible, then my recommendation is to tell them, you either give us permission to talk to your parents or you will be financially responsible. So you have to pay the bill. Usually they'll sign it then, and you tell them that, if there's something you truly don't want us to tell your parents, like sometimes if someone has an eating disorder and they don't want their parents to know, and that might come up in a discussion. Obviously, it would come up in an exam if there's damage to the teeth. You can agree to that we won't disclose that. But in terms of treatment and or financial arrangements, absolutely. And the parents get ugly about it. I'm paying the bill. And blah, blah, blah. The other thing we see is with divorced parents. There are some people that believe that because they are the custodial parent or have primary custody, that the non-custodial parent does not have a right to know about treatment. And they do. They absolutely do. And it doesn't have to be the permission of the other parent, or doesn't have to have the permission. And the other parent can designate someone as their representative. So the most frequent example I see, there's two divorced parents, and now there's a new step parent involved, or it's a girlfriend or a boyfriend, and there's that animosity many times in between the two, and you can't talk to them. Well, they've given us permission to discuss treatment with stepmom or stepdad, and that's legally allowed. And they will fight you on it. They'll be ugly about it. But the courts have determined that the biological or adoptive parent has the right to information about their child, regardless of who has custody, unless there's some court order that says no. And that's pretty rare. So it's ugly. The pediatric and the ortho practices deal with that.
Yeah, that's something I haven't dealt with in the past. That would be so difficult.
It is. And it adds to the stress, but the practice has to have a firm policy in place. That's where training comes in. Everybody knows this is what we say. This is how we say it. This is our policy, and we don't deviate from it.
Well, this has been incredibly informative. Thank you so much for all of this information. For people who are listening and might have some follow-up questions or want to take some of your courses, or I don't know, maybe if you're listening to this in like 2025, maybe we're seeing each other again. I don't know. Hopefully we are. But if they want to find out more information, how can they find you?
Absolutely. They can find me on my website, Mary Govoni, Govoni.com. I also have a Facebook page, Mary Govoni, Govoni and Associates. And I do a monthly newsletter for OSHA, HIPAA compliance, infection control. And you can sign up either on my website or you can sign up on the Facebook page. And they also can email me at mary@marygovoni.com.
Amazing. Well, Mary, thank you so much for your time. It's truly appreciated. We're always just amazed at the people who come on and just believe this content so that we are better, clinicians that are treating our patients with the highest standard of care. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you for inviting me, and thank you for all the good work that you do in helping to provide that content and access to that to everyone out there. So thank you, Michelle.
Thanks. Well, this was amazing. She's so good. That was like the fastest interview. I don't know why, but like hour feels like a minute and a half when I'm on these interviews. Like I'm on such a nerd high afterwards. It's amazing. But Mary did a great job of going through everything. Please reach out to her if you have any questions. We would love to hear your questions. Interact with us on social media too, because that's how we all kind of grow in this space with HIPAA, is like just trying to ask questions and we're like, is this going to be okay? Because no one wants to get in trouble. No one wants to get a fine. And I'm always trying to remind people that, like, how would you feel if a nurse was doing that to you, to your child? Like if they were taking a picture and like, oh my God, this person never hasn't lost a weight, or takes a picture of the scale or something, like something obnoxious and puts it out there on Facebook. Well, that's essentially kind of what we do a lot of times.
Oh, yeah.
And by the way, you cannot just post pictures and be like, okay, patient given permission to post it. Like it doesn't work like that. So y'all be careful with all of that out there, because I know you're out there trying to do good things. Don't let one little relaxed moment steal your career or create a huge fine for you. Well, Andrew, I'm going to let you go then so you can go take care of your burnt face. Ugh. Gosh,
Thank you.
driving
Lots of
crazy.
aloe, I think is what's good for that.
Lots of aloe and also sunscreen. Lord,
Cool.
I'm going to send you my recommendations. And
Look
if
forward to that.
you guys have recommendations, send it to us. And you can do that on any of the social media platforms, because we're on social or on Instagram and we're on Facebook. You could direct message us there. If you want to send your recommendations straight to Andrew, you can do that at Andrew at taleof2hygienist.com. And if you want to reach out to me, you can do that at Michelle at taleof2hygienist.com. But definitely go to our website, taleof2hygienist.com. And that's where you're going to find all of our resources, more episodes, the show notes. If you're wanting to get CE credit for any of these episodes, we have it all on our website. Also, our Science Sundays, our chairside chat. We have all kinds of stuff there. So check it out. Also, we have that living document that OSAP and DentaQuest created for COVID-19. It's updated every time the CDC makes recommendations or any changes. It's right there. It's on the ATOC library under resources. So go check that out. And thanks for listening. And we appreciate any rating and reviews of the podcast. There's a quick little link in our show notes that you can go to, and it'll take you straight to an easy form, because we would very much appreciate ratings and reviews. I think that's it, Andrew.
I think that's it. Be safe, everyone. Talk to you next week.
Bye, y'all.